Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Can I have a mover and a seconder to call the meeting to order, please? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral. Motion that the regular meeting of Council of the Township of Springwater of April 3rd, 2019 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Please stand for the singing of the national anthem led by Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all our sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest tonight? There are none. Thank you. I will now call upon Elise Dostal of LAS Water and Sewer Warranty Program to present to Council for up to 10 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me this evening and the opportunity to share some details about the program. Is this good? Everyone can hear me? Just to be clear though, I am from Service Line Warranties of Canada, not AMO LAS. The program is endorsed by AMO LAS. Just in case there was any confusion, I don't want it to seem like I'm from LAS when I'm not. But Eleanor Schneider, who's over at LAS, is our main point of contact for the program, and she's also happy to answer any questions about it and is fantastic. And actually, until I started a year ago, did these presentations herself. So I'm here today to share with you some information about the Service Line Warranty Program that we have in place in 50 municipalities across Ontario. And what is it and why is it important? So LAS has partnered with us to offer residents of Ontario municipalities a sewer and water lateral warranty service. Many homeowners are not aware of the responsibility on the private side, so when they have certain issues with water or sewer lateral failures, they think certain things are the town's responsibility and then are surprised to find out when they have high unexpected costs on the private side. Again, homeowners are not typically aware of the responsibility for repair or replacement for the utility service lines, not covered in a standard homeowner policy. A couple of insurers are now offering it as a rider onto a homeowner policy, but it's significantly more expensive and still would require a deductible and out-of-pocket money in the event that anything happened, whereas with the warranty program, as long as someone is paying a monthly or annual fee, there is no deductible, no out of pocket. We just send someone to come and fix the problem. So over time, these lines can fail from root intrusion, rusting, rotting, clogs, leaks, frozen pipes, all that fun stuff, which can be costly and stressful. So through the program, we have an 100% optional enrollment, 24/7 customer service from local contractors. So we partner with local contractors first and foremost that are recommended by Public Works, usually people that the municipality already works with. But as long as someone is licensed and insured and doing things up to code, we welcome them to join us as well. The contractors do like it because it rings the bell for them as well. In many cases, when people are maybe not so proactive about issues they know they have in this area that are not super severe yet, they may hold off on calling a plumber or contractor because they don't want to pay the cost that it will be. So this allows us to proactively ring the contractor's bell as well, because when they know that they're not going to have a high bill, then obviously they're more proactive about calling and getting some issues resolved. So basically the way the partnership works is we partner with the municipality. There's no cost to the municipality. We simply require your endorsement. And in exchange for that, we typically provide, I would say about 90 5% of our municipal partners a 5% royalty, which people put into other areas of their budget. Alternatively, you could pass the savings back to your residents and provide a slightly lower cost per month to them. But the majority of our municipal partners do take the royalty because it's intended to compensate for any small administration that there could be on your end, answering questions from residents, etc. So what does it cover and how much? The warranties are available for 3 products: the external water line, the external sewer line, and the septic well systems. I don't know if you have residents who are also on those systems that are not on municipal water, but we cover that as well. The coverage caps are between $3,000 and $8,000, depending on the coverage that these residents would choose, and 99% of claims would fall below that. We've set those standards through some of our longer standing partners like City of Hamilton, adjusted them occasionally for larger incidents. So we've raised the coverage cap in some cases to $16,000 instead of $8,000 for sewer. We are able to customize it depending on historically what the municipality is aware of those repairs traditionally being in the area. If they feel that that isn't enough, we can certainly increase it. I'm happy to answer any questions later. I don't know what percentage of your residents would the septic well systems would apply to. So I'm just going to leave this for later. But they are included in this coverage. So this is intended primarily for single family homeowners, not commercial properties. There's no pre-inspection of any of the pipes. We simply couldn't, the volume that we have of people enrolling, it wouldn't be realistic for us to go to each and every home and inspect the situation of their pipes. We do get some self-selectors who know that they already have a bit of an issue, and our model accounts for that. So there's no, they can enroll right away and they would be covered should they have an issue the next day. The distinction between this kind of coverage and insurance is that the plans are a warranty service offered by us as an independent private provider. So typically, as I mentioned before, while a couple homeowner policies would have this kind of coverage as a rider, there would be a claim involved. They would have a deductible, and then they would need to come and get someone to bring them back up and running before they got any money back from the insurance company, if they did. And so it would be a lot of out of pocket, which for people on a fixed income can be difficult. So typically we say, to ask the insurance provider if their policy does cover repairs to water and sewer line systems, because more often than not, it doesn't cover these kinds of repairs and replacements. It'll cover water damage, but not things of this nature. So that's where it can be quite helpful to have this kind of coverage in place to mitigate any risks that can be quite costly for your homeowners. So first and foremost, it's really a marketing agreement to allow us to get the message out to your residents about the program. So we get the question from some municipalities about why, you would partner with us on the program and we wouldn't just send the mailing out to your residents ourselves. So the way that it works is typically our mailing is about $3 per household. So if we were to go and mail all of your residents information on the program, AMO LAS doesn't mean anything to an average homeowner who's not associated with the public sector. So, chances are they wouldn't open it in that case. And if they hadn't lived in one of the 50 municipalities where we're currently offering the program, then they wouldn't be familiar with us either. So it just ensures that residents are aware that it is a credible program. At the very least, they open the letter and read about it. It's emphasized that it is optional. But at the very least, they know that it's a legitimate program that's made available to them through a municipal partnership, because it's not something that they could enroll in direct to consumer on their own. And we could never afford to offer the level of coverage that we do for the price of $5 to $7 a month if we were, getting 99% of our marketing letters going in the garbage. So that's the way that, those partnerships work. So typically, a lot of our municipal partners view it as a win-win because it doesn't cost the municipality anything. It's a good program for your residents. It sometimes can alleviate some headaches from Public Works because they are often the people that get these kinds of calls. And it gives your residents a good option from unexpected costs, which aren't fun for everybody. So the way that the marketing campaigns work is a few times a year we'd have a letter, typically seasonal. We ask the municipality to approve the letter. We don't send anything out without the municipality's consent. So each time we would want to mail your residents, we would say, are you okay with the language used in this letter? Are you comfortable? Do you want any changes? We do have tried and tested, letters that we know work in all of our municipalities, but we're certainly always open to, any adjustments that would be made so that you ensure that, you'd be comfortable with the communication and how it's presented to the residents. So that's typically how it works. I want to make sure that there's time for questions. The contractors I briefly spoke to earlier on how that works. This is a bit more of a breakdown of the rates, as I mentioned, between $5 to $7 per month. The interior plumbing is not included in that simply because it's not one of our main programs that we work with the municipality on, but it is offered to the residents as part of this. It's not linked to public infrastructure in any way, but it is a very popular product because personally I had a issue with my sink a few weeks ago, and it was an unexpected $300 bill to get the plumber to come in and fix it. So people in some cases would rather pay $5 a month and never have to worry if they have an issue. They just pick up the phone and someone comes. So that's quite popular as well, but we don't add it in here for the purposes of the conversation with the municipality. These are some of our partners. Really, of all sizes, all across Ontario, it really varies. We work with a vast number of municipalities, each being different, but the benefits of the program really being the same. So anyone from Wawa, Ontario to, Peel region. And as I mentioned, the enrollment's pretty straightforward. We simply ask that council approves the marketing agreement, provides us with a municipal logo, and approves any content that we would send out to the residents a couple of times a year. Questions?
Okay, thank you very much. That's
Thank you.
That's interesting new information. Council, questions, comments? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you. My question would involve liability issues. If the municipalities are partnering with a private company offering this warranty, how do the other municipalities circumvent that or mitigate that?
Our agreement makes it clear that the liability is all on our end. It's a 3-page agreement, and the terms in there all indicate that if there's any legal issues, that all that is on us.
Councillor Hanna?
So far, we haven't had any.
Thank you. You just briefly touched on septic systems.
Mm-hmm.
Our municipality has entered into a septic reinspection program.
Okay.
If somebody was to buy into your plan for $100 a year and their septic's inspected, it needs repairs or it fails, would your program cover replacing that or repairing that?
Just the lines, so not the actual system itself, but just the water lines. So, I mean, if we get into that, it would be significantly more costly for us on our end, and there would be a strong variance in the system, right? Because they're all different sizes. Typically, the reason why we stick with a single-family home with, water and sewer laterals that are pretty much the same going in and going out, is because they're pretty standard across the board from home to home. Whereas when you get into some of the septic and well systems, there can be vast differences that can really affect the cost, which is why we try and keep our septic coverage to be essentially the same with the water line. But I am asked about it often, and I think we might look at that in future. But for now, the septic coverage is just for the actual pipe itself, water line.
So just further that, so those are the lines going to the holding tank, or the lines that are the weeping tiles out from the holding tank in a septic situation?
I'll have to get back to you on that. We've really just started offering it, so I haven't been getting as many questions about it. It's only our last few partnerships in the last few months that have we've been offering that. So some of the more specific questions, but from what I've been told, it's just the comparable water line, but I'll get back to you on a specific answer on that, because I don't know exactly how it works. I'm not the technical expert.
Okay. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through to you.
What is the repair response time? So if a resident's called and needs something fixed?
We try and keep it within 24 hours, contingent on the resident's schedule. Obviously, you know, if they call us and they're not home, we can't do anything. So obviously they have to be there. But we're able to get the majority of our repairs done within 24 hours or less. That's one of the standards that we ask of our contractor partners. So we're pretty selective with you know, the contractors that we work with in each area, which is why we usually look to Public Works to find or refer the best people that they work with. But we also always ask for feedback to each resident or each customer after they have something done, so that we're getting feedback on the contractor and making sure that they're meeting our standard of service. But for example, a few years ago when we had that really bad winter, the polar vortex, in our Hamilton, where we had the vast majority of our customers that are our oldest standing partner for I think 5 years now, they had streets and streets and streets of people whose pipes were frozen, who were without water, and all of our customers we were very proud to say we're back up and running within 24 hours. We bought our local contractors special machinery to help them have the best possible equipment to get our customers thawed. And they had many others individuals where neighbors were not thawed, and they're asking, like, how come you guys have running water and we don't? And it was because they were customers of ours. So the following winter our enrollments went way up. But just you know, these cases are often, you know, important problems that, you know, you do want a quick response on. So we are very cognizant of that. And it's 24/7, 365. So that whole thing that I mentioned in Hamilton happened over Christmas.
I saw on your list of customers, Oro-Medonte, is there any, it was a long list, I couldn't see anybody else in Simcoe County. And my other part of the question is there a website that has more information about details about this and endorsements, or?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the AMO LAS website has a page dedicated to this program and the details there. And Eleanor Schneider, who's program manager at LAS, typically, you know, is able to answer any additional questions. But, you know, we also have some of our larger partners like Hamilton and Peel also have dedicated pages on their website to tell their residents about the details of the program. And then obviously there's our own, you know, website with our information. So there is a lot of information out there. Oro-Medonte, I only brought them on as a partner maybe just before the elections, or this summer, maybe midsummer. So they probably have only had one mailing so far. So they're relatively new, and they haven't had, you know, we don't have a huge amount of customers there yet, probably. I haven't checked in on them.
I see Romero there, that's in Simcoe County.
Yeah, Romero actually has been a partner for a longer amount of time. Romero was one of the partners that was in place before I started over a year ago. So we always welcome, you know, at later stages, municipalities to get in touch with our other partners. Typically the best people to speak with are, you know, people like City of Hamilton, because while they're much bigger in size, it also means they've seen it all, and they have, you know, there's customers in any and every situation. Plus they've been a partner for 5 years, so they've, you know, there's a long track record there. But some of our smaller partners, you know, we're always happy to make, you know, an introduction for references with their permission, of course.
Okay. I would ask that you send the presentation to our clerk so she could pass it on to us, plus the links to get onto the
absolutely.
website, please. Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you. Just curious, the AMO, are they gaining any monetary benefit from being partnering with your company as well? That's
Yes.
one question. I have another one too.
Yeah, we do.
Don't have to get in details. I just wanted to know whether there was any monetary advantage for them for
We have
partnering with you.
yeah, we have an agreement with them.
Thank you. And my second question is, when you're talking about direct mailing at the company's expense, there would be no expectation that the township would incur any costs or have to put any inserts in
No.
any of their own mailings?
Not at all.
Okay,
Not at all.
thank you for clarifying.
In fact, we also don't require you to provide us with any of the public data, because privacy can also be an issue. So we go out and purchase all of the customer data ourselves. All that we ask is that the municipality confirm the postal codes, so we make sure that they're going to the right places, and we're also not leaving anyone out, because we don't want one area to get it and one area not to.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Ritchie?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm on septic, so the line from the house to the septic plugs up. Do I call you guys?
That's it, yeah, to answer your question.
Yeah, because if you get into the weeper tile, that's part of the system.
Yeah.
You don't handle that. It's
So-
just the line from the tank into the house.
Yeah,
That's your,
yes.
thank you.
Sounds like you have a customer there.
Well,
Thank you very much for the presentation, and could I have a motion, please, to receive the presentation? Mover and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral, that the delegation from Elise Dostal regarding AMO LAS Water and Sewer Warranty Program be received. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
thank you.
Turning to question period. Anybody, any of the members of the public wish to pose a question with respect to something on the agenda tonight? Each person has up to 2 minutes. Anybody like to pose a question? Not tonight? Okay. Moving on to minutes. Can I have a mover or seconder for the approval of the minutes? Councillor Chapman, Councillor Moore, that the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented, and those being minutes of the special meeting of council March 14, 2019, minutes of the regular meeting of council March 20, 2019, and minutes of the special meeting of council March 25th, 2019. Any comments with respect to these? All those in favor? Carried. Mover and a seconder for the minutes of the boards, committees, and other organizations. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral. That the minutes of the boards, committees, and other organizations listed herein be received as information. Those being minutes of the Heritage Committee meeting of October 30, 2018. Minutes of the Springwater Library Board meeting of February 19, 2019. Minutes of the Midhurst Community Recreation Association meeting of January 15, 2019. Minutes of the Elmvale BIA meeting of February 21, 2019, and minutes of the Springwater Recreation Advisory Committee meeting of February 28, 2019. All those in favor? Any questions, comments with respect to those? All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to 7.1, correspondence and information items. May I have a mover and a seconder to get these on the floor? Councillor Cabral, Councillor Ritchie. And we have 5 items here. Aside from discussion, anybody want to pull any of these items? Councillor Hannah.
Item 2, please.
Okay, item 2 will be pulled. Any comments on 1, 3, 4, or 5? I'd like to just make some comments with respect to the NVCA items. The board meeting on March 19th, or March 22nd, 2019, was our first board meeting really to consider business, and that involved the final review and approval of the NVCA budget for 2019. I brought forward a couple of motions there, and the first motion was that in the 2019 draft budget, the removal of the hiring of 2 new positions, an engineer and a junior planner, for a total projected cost of $179,411, and that the municipal levy be recalculated reflecting this. There was discussion, and that motion was defeated. We then proceeded to vote on the budget, and I did not vote in favor of this year's budget because of that. I didn't think it was the right time to be hiring those 2 positions, given the environment that we're in now and the uncertainty about what's going to happen with respect to conservation authorities. I also brought forward a motion for consideration, which will be voted on next time, and that motion was all future financial reporting and budgeting The departmental results are presented as well as the consolidated detailed results, and the budget numbers are compared to year-to-date actuals and projections, and that the financial reporting be accompanied with comprehensive narrative explaining variances and the budget drivers and pressures. So that'll be reviewed next meeting. And the other highlights are contained within the item in 3 and the information in 4. So just wanted to present that. Okay, any other points with respect to those other items aside from 2? So I will read the motion that the correspondence and information items listed herein be received as information. The letter from the Ministry of Finance regarding the 2019 Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. The letter from the NVCA Board meeting highlights of March 22nd, 2019, the MVC Conservation Update, March 2019, the letter from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, refunding for small and rural municipalities, with the exception of item 2 to be dealt with separately. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, item number 2, Councillor Hanna.
Thank you, Mayor. It's just a question with regard to request for a letter approving the low flyby on July the 11th and honoring our military. They've received one from Clearview Township, I guess approving it, and they're asking for Springwater to do the same. Are we doing such a thing?
If we wish to do that, we need to bring forward a motion. Councillor Hanna?
I would be pleased to do that.
And a seconder to that, Councillor Cabral. And the motion that correspondence and information item 2, letter from MF Live Inc. for Roxodus Music Fest request for CF-18 flyby be received as information, and that council is hereby supportive of a flyby by RCAF aircraft as low as 500 feet, flyby for the planned Roxodus Music Festival being held in Stayner, Ontario for transit, practice, and shows on July 11, 2019. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Oh, there's a question? Deputy Mayor Coghlan.
Thank you, Marilyn. The letter is obviously a template provided by the proponent here, but it's not in Stayner. Does that matter? It states that it's being held in Stayner, Ontario, and that's not where the festival is being held.
Clerk Chaperon.
Thank you. When I create the letter, I'll just put Clearview Township and I'll remove Stayner.
Thank you. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to 8.1, action reports. I need a mover and seconder to get these on the table, please. Councillor Moore and Councillor Chapman. And are there any items from 8.2 to 8.7 that would like to be pulled? Deputy Mayor Coghlan.
Thank you, Marilyn. 8.7.
Thank you. Any others? Councillor Hanna.
We'd just like a make a comment on 8.5, please.
Okay. All right. And I'd like to make a ask Director Spagnell to comment on 8.3 with respect to the delegated authority for subdivision approval.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The purpose of the report is to obtain direction from council to request that the county delegate approval authority for the subdivision process under sections 51 and 53 of the Planning Act. The purpose behind the request is essentially to provide for a more streamlined process and less duplication of services between the county and the township. It would also provide for almost a more customer-oriented service type setup in that anybody who's coming in to apply for a plan of subdivision would not have to apply to two separate tiers of government. From a process standpoint, essentially all that is required is pending council's endorsement of staff requesting for delegated authority would be the review of a memorandum of understanding, which would have to come before this council, and then council's acceptance of that and authorization for the mayor to sign that memorandum of understanding, which would essentially provide the municipality authority over subdivision approval, which ultimately would give the municipality more control over subdivision authority and would switch the county over into a more commenting type authority and role. As far as the process goes, this could be a 3 to 4 month process, depending on how quick reviews take place and depending on how long it takes for the county to get a bylaw passed before a county council. So in essence, really, Springwater is one of 3 remaining municipalities that do not have delegated approval authority. And one of the tests that have to be demonstrated to the county is that the municipality has the resources to carry forward with delegated approval, which Springwater does have, as we are currently facilitating circulations and everything that is required under the Planning Act for subdivision approval as it rests right now.
Thank you for that further information, Director. I also wanted to pull 8.4, so, but moving on to 8.5, CAO Brindley, you've been meeting with staff and have a recommendation with respect to the funding that we might be applying for.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was actually looking in my public works person's on holiday, so. Staff actually looked in detail at this funding program, looked at the requirements, and at the same time looked at projects we had available. And when we looked at what we felt was the best option we had in terms of request for funding was the St. Vincent Street Bridge Design Project. It was already in our 5-year capital forecast. And we feel from a safety perspective and the criteria that the province is looking for, we felt that the St. Vincent Street Bridge would be the best project to apply for this funding.
Councillor Hanna, did you have a comment on that?
My question was, thank you, my question was through to CO Brindley, and that's just that CO Brindley will know that the developers are paying for St. Vincent to be widened with the Midhurst secondary plan to 3 lanes. When it gets to the bridge, it's going to go back to 2 lanes. We've had a lot of public complaints over the years about St. Vincent shouldn't just be 3 lanes, there should be 4, but however, south of the bridge, it should continue to be the same to accommodate the same traffic flow, and if we only widen the bridge to an existing 2 lanes, we may regret it in the future. I'm suggesting that maybe when we go forward with this $550,000 request, we consider that being a 4-lane or at least a 3-lane bridge in order to accommodate the current plan to widen St. Vincent to 3 lanes and not allow it to get back down to 2, because it's just going to be a bottleneck if we do that, and we already have problems there, as you know, so it's just an observation.
CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Hanna, very good point, and I'll make sure that's covered off.
Okay, so we're looking at the action report item 8.2 through to 8.6 be received, and that the recommendations contained therein be approved as presented, being 8.2 SP 219-001 McIntyre, 8.3 delegated authority for subdivision approval, 8.5 rural and northern communities funding stream, 8.6 appointment of additional lottery licensing officers, and 8.4 and 8.7 being wildland firefighting agreement for Simcoe County Forest and Simcoe County Off-Riders Association Trail use agreement will be accepted. So with the exception of items 8.4 and 8.7 to be dealt with separately. Any further discussion with respect to that? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, starting with 8.4, and this pertains to the wildland firefighting agreement for Simcoe County Force. And I need to turn the chair over to Deputy Mayor Coughlin because I would like to propose an amendment to this particular matter.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and we require a mover and a seconder. So moved by Mayor Allen, and is there a seconder for this? Councillor Cabral? I am the chair. So moved by Mayor Allen and seconded by Councillor Cabral that the report from the Director of Fire and Emergency Services regarding the wildland firefighting agreement of the County of Simcoe Forest be received and that the bylaw be presented to council to adopt the wildland firefighting agreement for Simcoe County Forests. And Mayor Allen, comment?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Coghlan. I just read these two agreements, and I was talking with Chief Cavey, who is here tonight, which is great. And the old 1999 agreement is being replaced by a current one put forward by the county. In reading and comparing the two agreements, I see that the 1999 one is more comprehensive as far as its coverage, although it is intended to cover forests, but the wording is broader than that in the 99 agreement. The exceptions don't seem to be as specific, and there's it's an agreement in perpetuity by the looks of it. There's not a termination clause. So I don't see anything wrong with the old agreement. In fact, it has more potential, in my opinion, to be used if we need to use it. So I'm not seeing the need to restrict ourselves further by considering this new agreement, and the county isn't pressuring us to sign this new agreement. So I would appreciate comment from Chief Cavey with respect to this, please.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And Chief Cavey?
Thank you, through the chair, to Mayor Allen. Staff agrees wholeheartedly. The 1999 agreement was brief, and while staff certainly recognises the attempts by both the Simcoe County Fire Chief Administrative Group to provide a more detailed agreement, staff doesn't believe that it's in the municipality's best interest, contrary to the way the report's written, for us to do anything other than retain the existing 1999 agreement. And the reason for that is the 20-year-old agreement says that all lands in the municipal boundaries of the Township of Springwater owned by the County of Simcoe, including the county forests, as well as all roadways or road allowances, basically we can recover our costs through the county, and they'll pay for all of our firefighting efforts and those of any other agencies that we have to bring in to fight such a fire. I think the county and some of the fire chiefs from other municipalities were very interested in compromise whereby they receive 2 days of free wildland firefighter training. It isn't particularly attractive to us because we have people that specialize in that regard in-house and who are able to teach it. So for us, this is actually a worse deal for the municipality than taking the new one. So I wholeheartedly support the amendment.
Thank you, Chief Cavey. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. Chief, I was reading the list of equipment that comes with this package, and it seemed to be very sparse. I'm just wondering, is that sufficient? Like 4 hose backpacks, I think there was a couple of axes. It seems very limited equipment to try to put out a potential forest fire.
Chief Cavey?
Thank you, through the chair, to Councillor Hanna. You're right, we actually do have 2 of everything that you see on that list available to us, made available by the county. However, that can be taken to any municipality within the county for any wildfire that they are fighting, whether it's on county-owned property or within that particular municipality. Recognising the fact that A, the equipment can move, and B, there's not that much of it, the department also has its own stock of wildland firefighting equipment, so we're well covered in either eventuality.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Okay, so in voting on this matter, if council should choose to go with the new agreement, you would be in favor of it, and if you choose not to go with the new agreement, you would not be in favor of it, and if this motion is defeated, we would remain with the 1999 agreement. Oh, sorry, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is defeated. And I'll pass the chair back over to Mayor Allen.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Coughlin. And so we will move on to 8.7, which is the action report, Simcoe County Off-Riders Association Trail Use Agreement. Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn. The report, I'm just asking that the motion before council be referred and that it comes forward at a time. Oh, sorry. I need a seconder. Sorry, do I explain what I'm? You're doing it. You have the chair. I gave it back to you.
Mover and a seconder. So you're, Deputy Mayor Coughlin moving it, seconding it, Councillor Chapman. Thank you. So I will pass that to you, and that is the amendment. The motion reads that the report from the Director of Recreation Parks and Properties regarding Simcoe County Off-Road Riders Association Trail Use Agreement renewal dated April 3rd, 2019 be received, and that subject to deliberations in the affirmative, that an agreement be renewed between the Township of Springwater and the Simcoe County Off-Road Riders Association for the continued use of a portion of Floss Road 3 West and a portion of the North Simcoe Rail Trail and an unopened portion of the Russell Road as depicted in the subject report for a period of 4 years, and the township's duly authorized signing officers execute the necessary documents. Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm moved by myself, and I believe Councillor Chapman seconded. The motion before council be referred, and that the information regarding the agreement renewal be included with the future report of the authorization of all-terrain vehicles on township roads, and that the current agreement continue in place until such time.
Thank you. Any questions or discussions with respect to this? Councillor Cabral?
There we go. Thank you, Mayor Allen. Actually, I guess I'm looking for clarification here. These aren't ATVs. These are dirt bikes that wouldn't normally be permitted on the roadway unless they were licensed anyway. So I guess that's my question here is, are we in a position to allow them to use a roadway that they wouldn't normally be permitted on anyway without having licensing and insurance in place, or I don't know?
I'll turn it over to Director Belcourt to make comment, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Cabral. The agreement addresses unopened road allowances and connections. It does not address any on-road routes for off-road motorcycles. If they're not licensed, they're not permitted on a roadway one way or another.
I support this amendment because I think it just puts the discussion of this and the same time period as we will be reviewing the ATVs, which we're in the process of doing after having 2 public meetings. And so we don't deal with it piecemeal. The existing agreement, which I believe just expired, can be extended per the amendment until we get a chance to discuss this along with the other aspects of the ATV review within the next 4 to 6 weeks. Any? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm in agreement with what you're saying. I guess, have difficulty seeing how this is going to tie in with the ATVs because they are licensed and insured, whereas these are vehicles that aren't licensed and won't be insured. So I'm okay with the motion. I'm just saying I don't know how it plays into the ATV scheme of things.
CAO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and maybe to address Councillor Cabral's concern, it's my understanding that was potentially, and I'm asking our director to confirm that, this agreement also anticipated the opening up of some additional roads. And since our ATV looks at opening up roads, the thought was that we should deal with both at the same time, because this agreement, if the agreement was just the way it was before, we probably wouldn't be talking about this. But since the agreement anticipates opening up some new roads, and we're looking at opening up roads as part of ATV, the thoughts were that maybe we should hold this back a bit and then deal with it all at the same time.
Okay, so we will vote on the amendment. So the amendment is a motion on before council be referred and that the information regarding the agreement renewal be included in future report regarding authorization of all-terrain vehicles on township roads, and that the current agreement continued until that time. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on to information reports, which is 9.1. Can I have a mover and seconder to get those on? Councillor Moore and Councillor Chapman. Are there any of these items that you'd like to get pulled? Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Thank you, Marilyn. It's not a poll, it's just a comment
Okay, on
on number 1, the Springwater Fire and Emergency. It's just a comment.
Okay, anybody else like to, Councillor Cabral?
Not the poll, I just also like to make a comment on the annual report as well.
Are there, item 1, are there any items that anybody would like to have pulled to address changes or amendments? All right. Then we'll start with Deputy Mayor Coghlan. Your points on 1, please.
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you to Chief Cavey. I just wanted to commend the fire services. It's an amazing report, very well put together. It's a great document that I would like to have shared with the public for sure, more so than it is right now. And also in the report, when it speaks to the Ask Sparky and that there was a request to run it again, is it running again this year?
Chief Cavey.
Thank you, Worship. Through to the Deputy Mayor. First of all, this report would look nowhere near as good had it not been for the particular skill and talent of Natalie Graham, our communications officer, who did a fantastic job with the information that I provided her. And in regards to the Ask Sparky event, yes, it is running again, and we've just delivered our first offering of that within the last 7 days.
Councillor Cabral, you had comments?
I apologize, Mayor Allen, I don't have a comment anymore.
No problem, that's good. I'd also like to ask Director Spagnol just to touch a little bit more on item 3. I know we're going to be reviewing it in a planning public meeting coming up, but no, not item 3, sorry. On item 4, the 60 Yonge Street North, which we'll be addressing in a public meeting, but this is interesting because I think it's a new concept with respect to this property. Director Spagnol?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Yeah, the development application that's going to be considered by council is an intensification project where 12 units are essentially being proposed for redevelopment for an additional 12 units, a total 24-unit apartment building. The proposal as it stands right now is a vast improvement from the recently approved site plan. So it's a good news project in that it provides for additional units, another type of housing product for Elmville at potentially a different price point. So it's a project that is something that is definitely encouraged for redevelopment and intensification, especially within settlement areas such as Elmville.
Thank you, Director. All right, if there are no more comments with respect to this, I'll read the motion that the report items listed herein be received as information. Number 1, Springwater Fire and Emergency Services 218 Annual Report. Number 2, ZB 21901 McIntyre 14 Finley Mill Road. Number 3, ZB 219002 and 001 Stone Manor Woods Yorkwood Phase 4 Block 349 on Plan 51M1065. Item 4, ZB 21903 Surtson Contracting, Re 60 Yonge Street North. Item number 5, minor variance application A03/19, J. Kazmierzak on behalf of S. Preborowski, 39 Nash Avenue. Sorry for any mispronunciation. Number 6, finally, application B03/19, boundary adjustment. S. Langman, re 2317 Floss Road 10 West and 2477 Floss Road 10 West. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to verbal reports, starting with Director Spagno on official plan update and economic development update, please.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. That's just to repeat, staff is working on a presentation for an educational session for council regarding the work that has been completed. We are aiming to have that meeting sometime in April. So staff continues to work on that. On the economic development front, staff's happy to report that the first economic development advisory group meeting or committee meeting is tomorrow to go over some of the initiatives that will be coming to the forefront for this council. And in addition to that, is happy to announce that the work for the website overhaul and redesign is complete. There is going to be a soft launch just to work out some of the kinks related to that, and the expectation is to have the website launch in April. And there will be definite advertisements through social media and other avenues to promote that and get people to take a look at the new website design. The team did an excellent job, and they met all timelines, worked within budget, and I think council's going to be very happy with the final product.
Thank you very much, Director. We look forward to that. Turning to municipal updates. Do any councillors have any municipal updates? Councillor Cabral.
I just wanted to jump on board here, Mayor Allen, and remind everyone about the Helmville Maple Syrup Festival. I hear there's going to be a real log saw-off over there, and we've got our own people champion in here, so I'll be there rooting for you, and I'm inviting everybody else to come out as well.
Thank you, Councillor. You saw the letter that had came from Oro Medante's council, so the challenge is on, no doubt about that. Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Thank you, Marilyn. I believe Tiny Township has also challenged you to a friendly bet.
They're very challenging, yes. Yes. Councillor Chapman?
I come to watch, but I'm not playing. I'm in the booth. But anyhow, I want to, sorry, thank you, Mayor Allen. I forgot to say that. Just Aunt Mills Easter extravaganza again is on April 20th. If you want to be involved, you just come out. There's a rabbit run and a whole bunch of good things for the kids, and it's well perceived by the residents and outside of residents. It's a great day, and just hope that the weather keeps up.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other things? Any other municipal updates then? CEO Brindley, I believe that you had something to discuss with us?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. In light of some of the discussions in the news, I was asked to just give a quick update, if I can, on the recent compliance audit committee status, if you wish, sir, if you want me to do that.
Yes, please, CEO Brindley.
Yeah. Before I get into this, and it's not going to be lengthy by any means, but I want to sort of maybe clear up some misunderstandings. Prior to 2009, the Compliance Audit Committee was essentially council. But in 2009, the Municipal Elections Act actually made sure that the Compliance Audit Committee was taken out of council's hands to ensure independence of process. So council's role in the act now is to essentially appoint a compliance audit committee and pay the expenses of that committee in carrying out its duty. In this regard, the committee is not overseen by and does not report to council. The reason is the principal independence is integral both to legislative mandate of the committee as well as to the integrity of the prosecutor's duties. For this reason, the committee and the prosecutor must be permitted to perform their respective functions free from outside interference and involvement, political or otherwise. And this has been emphasized in a few areas. First of all, there's lawsuits, Jackson against City of Vaughan, as well as Little against City of Ottawa, where the independence from council is clear. In these cases, and also I mentioned in the case of the jurisdictional review that occurred with respect to this compliance audit, the divisional court actually stated that the township was entitled to notice in the proceeding. However, the township should not have any partisan interest in the outcome of the proceeding. So I just want to emphasize before I get into an update that it is a separate process. Once the Compliance Audit Committee takes possession of a file, council is not involved, staff is not involved. The only staff involvement is the clerk in the act helps essentially support the committee. There's no decision the clerk makes. The clerk essentially helps with minutes and things like that, essentially in the administrative duties. So a few things just as background, because some of this council is fairly new, is the original complaint was made by Mr. McLean on June 24th, 2015. The Compliance Audit Committee considered the complaint and appointed an auditor on July 21st, 2015. No one, including Mr. French, challenged that appointment. The original audit was not a thorough investigative forensic audit, even though the MEA, which is Municipal Elections Act, contemplates one. The original audit identified several irregularities and apparent contraventions of the Municipal Elections Act. And some of these, unauthorized bank account was used for the election campaign. Not all campaign contributions were recorded, and various accounting entry errors were made. On October 23rd, 2015, the Compliance Audit Committee commissioned a second, but this time thorough and investigative audit report. Mr. French promptly commenced a court proceeding to set aside the appointment. Now, when it came to the court decision, and this was what's called a jurisdictional review, 3 Superior Court judges sitting as a panel at the Divisional Court of Ontario found that the Compliance Audit Committee had acted within its authority in ordering the second audit. Issues of public perception of fairness in light of irregularities had been engaged, and Mr. French's legal challenge was determined to be premature. The judge found that Mr. French had, as of then, delayed the matter likely by 2 years, and that's within their own decision. The judges also found that if Mr. French would be allowed the challenge to proceed, that would only serve to encourage those who seek, and this is in the report, the obfuscation of delay. Mr. French was required to pay the cost of the application, $15,000 to Mr. McLean and $5,000 to the Compliance Audit Committee. Second audit was done, and it was determined that, again, Mr. French had contravened the Municipal Elections Act, and there was a number of areas of which that occurred. And then on May 25th, the Compliance Audit Committee determined that legal proceedings were appropriate given the serious nature of the apparent contravention. On June 18th, 2018, the Compliance Audit Committee appointed Tony Fleming to act as an independent prosecutor in the matter. Then Mr. Fleming determined that charges were appropriate, and he caused a 10-count information to be laid on August 21st, 2018. And a 10-count information is a legal term in terms of the submission document. The matter is proceeding through courts, and Mr. Fleming is acting as an independent prosecutor. He does not take direction from the Township of Springwater or the Compliance Audit Committee, so it's completely separate. And when you looked at costs, maybe I'll just update costs because there is some question about that. Because some of the costs are out there saying that it's related solely to the prosecution, which isn't quite correct. But totally, the costs now sit at about $311,633, of which about $200,000 specifically relates to the jurisdictional review, which is essentially the action that Mr. French had commenced against the Compliance Audit Committee. If you look at it, about $228,470 is the total legal fees. As I mentioned, about 200 of that relates to the jurisdictional review, and $83,163 relates to essentially the audit fees and expenses of the committee. So audit fees are somewhere in the area of about $65,000, and the rest is remuneration, mileage, and those kind of things. So I just thought I'd set the letter, sort of some things straight, because one of the things I've heard people calling me about is why this municipality or why this council can't change the decision. Unfortunately, this is out of the hands of this council. It's been out of the council's hands since the Compliance Audit Committee was formed and essentially moved forward with the complaint originally on the expenses from Mr. French. So I just wanted to, A, clear that up, and if there's any other questions council has, I'm here to answer those within my abilities.
Thank you for the update, CAO Brindley. I thought that once the prosecutor came forward with the 10 counts, which I believe, and it was supposed to go to court last November 2018, that basically it would be handled then and it would be able to be over with respect to a finding and or a settlement with respect to that. Why has it continued on to this point in time, and what is the estimate going forward as far as how long this is going to take?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Originally, probably, you know, the case itself probably would have been well on its way in the fall of last year. Unfortunately, first of all, I believe in the November date, Mr. French showed up alone to court without a lawyer. Then a lawyer was, Mr. French did receive a lawyer, which led to an appointment with the judge later. But there's been a couple delays, again, through Mr. French, where we actually had a pre-trial at the end of March, and that has now been pushed back because of some requirements of Mr. French to a pre-trial in April. I just don't have the date handy in terms of the April pre-trial. But as it stands right now, I can't tell you when, other than a pre-trial is coming up later in April, and then hopefully the court will set an actual hearing, but I don't have a date for you, sorry.
But ongoing, we being council, has no input or influence on the prosecutor. Prosecutor doesn't report to us. We don't communicate with the prosecutor. We can't. We're not allowed to. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Councilors, any other? Councilor Hanna.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for clarification, CAO Brindley, the independent prosecutor, is that a court prosecutor or is that a prosecutor paid for by Springwater taxpayers?
CAO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Hanna. It's my understanding that the municipality pays for those fees.
I'm sorry, Springwater taxpayers pay the prosecutor?
Yes, pays for those prosecution duties, yes.
And we are not able to withhold those funds, correct?
Correct, sir.
Any other questions? I have a couple of more. Kate Harry's in an article dated March 29, 2019 in Aware Simcoe Springwater website, had some quotations based on conversations held after the last hearing with Mr. French's lawyer, whose name is Phil Horgan. And Mr. Horgan came up with some quotes that I'm confused about and I don't think are absolutely correct. I'd be interested in your thoughts on those. One of those question was asked, are the costs to the township covered by insurance? And his answer was, quote, no, insurance kicks in if the township is being sued or something. This was instigated by the township, end of quote. Not sure what this is, but certainly I'm correct in saying that the township never instigated anything with respect to this matter. Is that correct, CAO Brindley?
Mr. Mayor, that is correct. The original essentially file brought into the Compliance Audit Committee was from a private citizen, and since then the committee has operated as the committee does, and essentially with the fullness of time going through the compliance audit and then now the prosecution.
Thank you, CAO Brindley. And at the point of the benefit of repetition, the township didn't instigate this. This was a process instigated by the Municipal Elections Act, which has legislation that's come into play since, I believe, 2009 9, you have the date, to enable an independent selected compliance audit committee to review expenses of members who run for office, should there be an application by an applicant, which in this case, there was one. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
The next quotation is of Mr. Horgan was, quote, "The people who are paying the bills, the township, normally give instructions with respect to those bills. I'm talking legally. They're responsible for the actions of their lawyers," end of quote. I'm not sure the purpose of that comment, because we've just reviewed that we have no input or no control over the actions or the payment with respect to this process. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor.
The next question was, is the township obligated to carry on funding in this case? And the response of Mr. Horgan was, quote, "The township's lawyer expects to be paid. It is up to the township to decide whether it needs to proceed. For example, it could stand down if they think it's a frivolous case." Do you have any thoughts with respect to that quote, CAO Brinley?
Mr. Mayor, once the process is designed to be separate from council, so the whole process of the Compliance Audit Committee and therefore the prosecution afterwards has no contact at all with council, so council has no way or means of even instructing the lawyer. The lawyer acts independently.
And this is not the first time we've made that point, or that point's been made with respect to this. So I hope those who are listening realize that we have not influenced, nor can we influence this going forward. It has to take its course, but we're certainly anxious to get settlement in the end of the costs in this process as soon as possible. Are there any other comments about this, Council? Thank you. I skipped over county updates. I'm sorry, but Deputy Mayor Coghlan, are there any county updates?
Not at this time. There is a task force that has been appointed from County Council in order to review the regional review. So at our next, not our next meeting, the one after that, I'll be able to report to this council as to what the County of Simcoe's plan is on the regional review moving forward. I've been appointed to that task force.
Thank you. And Councillor Moore, excuse me.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I wonder if we should be putting the municipal governance or government review as a standing item on the agenda, because it is so important to all of us that I would certainly like to be kept up to date. Thanks.
Certainly we could do that. Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
If it appeases council, I can just include it as part of my county update and just do it every time that I'm here, and if I am not away, I can send it in. But absolutely, thank you. And if there's any questions of council that you would like me to find out to report back on that meeting, I'm happy to do that as well.
And Councillor Hanna?
To the mayor or the deputy mayor, being away on vacation, I received a bunch of emails while I was away, which I didn't have access to internet. The question about some changes to our waste pickup. Apparently there's some automated trucks coming that'll pick up the cans and dump it, and the emails I'm receiving is, where are these cans going to be placed? Because being rural, people have to put the containers in the driveway, not in the snowbank. So if you could just enlighten us, is that accurate, what I'm hearing, or are you aware of it?
The change to the cans is not something that I'm aware of. At the last meeting that we was talking about, it was the changing of the providers that are picking it up, moving from one company to two. The initiative to move forward to the different bins is being discussed, but it wasn't on our last agenda.
If I just add, excuse me, one of the items on the last agenda was renewing the waste management contracts, which are recycle plus organics. And so county staff came forward with a report saying that reviewing the existing contract when it expires, and saying that we have to consider new contracts for up to 9 years going forward for both of those. And they were proposing to look at 2 new contracts, both with and without the possibility of mechanical use of waste disposal, being mechanical pickup of the garbage, the recycling, and the organics, or not to include it in that. So it was decided at County Council to go ahead and get prices with respect to those alternatives. So note that we're far away from any decision. It's just how they're going to go out to market for quotes.
Thank you, and I hope the people that are asking me are listened and they got the answer. Thank you.
Any other municipal updates? Good. We move on to any notices of motion, item 11. No notices of motion, so we move on to 12 items for future consideration. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So I will bring forward our first item for future consideration, I guess, for our council, but it is bringing forward an old item that was on the previous items for future consideration, which is the quagmire of signage. So I'll call it that because I didn't quite know how to phrase my new consideration. So a little history. It started again because there was a sign complained about and was acted on by bylaw, brought to Director Spagnol, and we decided we weren't quite sure if we were going to be proactive or reactive in our signage noncompliance. So Director Spagnol and I had a meeting and decided that really the item is more about how the township wants to be seen and how we want, as a township, signage not to be uniform, but to have an understanding of what's acceptable and not acceptable. So we have signs that are on trailers and signs that are on moving farm tractors, signs that are old and signs that are new. So I offered to use Ward 4, particularly because we seem to have an enormous amount of signs, as a bit of a study, but recognizing that might be burdensome for the bylaw department, it was thought that we could come up with a solution with council on how to approach signs that are not in compliance, that are old potentially, and then what would be acceptable, and maybe how to approach those folks that have signs that really are unacceptable, but they're anyway. I hope that makes clear my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Maybe before we craft that item for future consideration and vote on it, which we do now with these, I'd ask CAO Brindley and Director Spagnol to just provide comment with respect to what the exercise might involve to consider such an item for future consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'll start, and I'll probably be looking to CAO Brindley to help me out here a little bit. But I think as far as from where staff sits, we see the exercise as being something to look at more of strategically where council wants to go with the sign bylaw and what council wants to see from a township-wide perspective as to what the image of this municipality is going to be. So from the standpoint of staff, it's almost as if the process has to entail the consideration of the sign bylaw and whether or not council supports that sign bylaw and the enforcement of that bylaw. I think ultimately that's the first question that council has to rationalize and has to consider, because if the sign bylaw is considered to be acceptable, an acceptable tool to follow the directions or the wants of council with respect to signage, the staff is more than willing to enforce it. However, if the sign bylaw that was recently revised does not follow this council's wishes as far as dealing with signage, staff can revisit that and make revisions to the bylaw to reflect council's wants with respect to signage and compliance with that bylaw. So I think the sign bylaw is the first stop, and in order to determine that, staff would require a review of that bylaw to determine and would require direction from council as to whether or not that bylaw is suitable right now, and whether or not it reflects what council wants to see with respect to signage. Moving forward from there, I think that there needs to be direction provided as well with respect to the enforcement of any bylaw. So whether or not staff are going to proactively enforce bylaws or be reactive, in essence, to deal with complaints. And really, at the end of the day, from staff's perspective, we are really looking for council's direction as to how council wants us to enforce the bylaw and what changes council wants to see with respect to signage and the image of the township with respect to signage along the roadways. I don't know if CAO Brindley has additional comments based on that, but I think from where I'm sitting, it really is a matter of council considering the sign bylaw and whether or not there needs to be changes to allow for either more flexibility with respect to signage or more rigidity.
Thank you, Director. And what about the aspect of inventorying signs, existing signs?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. As far as inventorying signs, Councillor Moore is correct in her statement that from a resource standpoint, it would be a rather large task and exercise to do to go and inventory each sign to determine compliance, to determine what is considered to be an acceptable sign versus a sign that might not be acceptable. The way that things operate now is, you know, if a sign is reported as, if we receive a complaint on a sign, or if staff proactively goes and enforces a sign, there's quite a bit of legwork that goes into reviewing files, reviewing to see if there's any documentation that demonstrates that the sign was legally established, which can require significant time just to review one sign. So I think when taking a look at Ward 4, for example, where there are multiple signs, that is a task that would task staff resources just from the standpoint of review and investigation. Because each sign might have its own history as to how it was arrived at or how it was constructed or installed. There would have to be information collected with respect to the date that it was installed, and there might be property owners that might not be willing to provide that information. There would have to be a review of whether or not the necessary permits were provided through the county process or the previous township sign bylaw. All those things would have to be considered with one sign in order to determine whether or not it's compliant or even grandfathered under the existing situation.
So CAO Brindley, do you think that just agreeing that we need a staff report on this to be coming forward within a reasonable time period is one option, or putting this on as an item for future consideration, which would result in the same result going forward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I definitely see where Director Spagno's going, because example, if we would do an inventory exercise and take a lot of time, and then afterwards the council fundamentally doesn't agree with the sign bylaw, you've almost wasted that time. So I would suggest maybe we put an item on the agenda where we can actually have a bit more conversation in terms of what council wants from us with respect to sign enforcement. Because our concern has been, we have a new sign bylaw, and the first two complaints we had, council was reticent to deal with it, which is challenging because we have two bylaw enforcement officers now. Part of that was to be more proactive on complaints, because we've received many complaints in the past that we don't have enough staff. Now that we're starting to staff up, we're being prevented from doing our duty. And I understand, you know, council has to have that balance between trying to look at policy and look at individual situations for each sign and try to come up with a balanced decision. We fully appreciate that, but maybe as an item that we can have a bit more conversation with, maybe an earlier council meeting, like have something, a little bit of some discussion period. Maybe we could find out what council's really looking for from the standpoint of enforcement, and whether or not we even need to go through the inventorying exercise, but at the end of the day, maybe that's something we still do, but not maybe as aggressively. We can pick apart at it. You know, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So we can probably go at that better. So I would recommend maybe we come back to council with a bit more time and sort of see what council's looking for.
Instead of putting it on IFC and having it languish there for a while. Is that what you're saying?
No, Mr. Mayor, I think it still should be on IFC. I still think it should be a standing item. It's important. Being on the list also makes sure it's top of mind for staff.
Okay.
I still think it should be that way, but maybe the first peel back of the onion is to sit down with council and understand how they see this, and that might help us with the next phase.
Any other comments by council with respect to this? Okay, we have Deputy Mayor Coghlan seconding it, and thank you, Councillor Moore, for bringing this up and doing the preliminary research. Okay, moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Deputy Mayor Coghlan, that the item for future consideration presented by Councillor Moore requesting that a report be brought forward to council for review of the township sign bylaw. Any further comment? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. I have a mover and a seconder for the bylaws, please. Deputy Mayor Coghlan, Councillor Cabral. That the bylaws listed here may be signed, sealed by the mayor and clerk, 219-039, appoint municipal law